Hey everyone, Internet TCS book reader here. Today I want to talk about Size, How It Explains the World by vaclav. This is one of those books that I got mostly because it's on discount. If it's not because of that, I most likely will skip it even if I do have some interest on how the book might explain how Size explains the world. It helps that the blurb from Bill Gates that said, "There is no author whose book I look forward to more," is in the front cover. So I thought I'd get a book with low expectation for the book and even less expectation that the video will get views. Low expectation, high hopes and all that. As a human, we like to measure things. Americans are still famous today at finding new ways to measure things, wanting to stand out more than the rest of the crowds. Instead of using the metric system that scientists use, they use feet, banana, deer, hanger, etc. Anything to avoid the metrics. But these many ways to describe sizes has been the case since way back in ancient times. Latin has two ways to describe sizes, magnitudo and dimensio. And each country have ways to describe sizes that are different from each other that sometimes don't make much sense even if you're from said country. But back to the metrics that scientists use. Even if most of the world agree with metrics, the way we measure things are still different depends on where we are. Take for example stairs, where in different countries there's a little difference in measurements between the steps, not just in the measuring metrics but in the centimeter size. And as a human, we have this fascination with story of size difference. It brings some underdog story to the narrative in small versus giant thing. The most famous modern one might be David versus Goliath, man versus giant, Nobita versus giant. But even way back before the Bible, in ancient Mesopotamia, we have the Epic of Gilgamesh, where Gilgamesh had to fight the giant monster Humbaba. Then much later, in ancient Greek, we have Odysseus having to outsmart the Cyclops. Even in modern times, we have Gulliver's Travel and Alice's Adventures in Wonderland, which continues to basically every game ever. For example, Shadow of Colossus or the Dark Souls series, which emphasizes the small versus large things really well. And our own relationship with large things is not just about self-fulfillment fantasy about taking down others larger and stronger than us. I mentioned this in the Egypt Life I reviewed recently that most countries just love to weird flags about building large things, whether they're pyramids, walls, or Rome's Pantheon. It's a bit like animals that puff up their chests trying to look larger and more intimidating. But we are not just out at things larger than us. If it's small enough, it also works in the same way but different way. That's why we make miniatures and model kit, and being able to write or even draw on a tiny rice gave us a very different feeling that is still similar to our feeling of largeness. Because that's how much size matters in our world. Remember that quantum physics, which is the study of very small things, is how we got microprocessor which literally changed how we live our life. And that's exactly what the book is trying to explore, emphasis on trying, because the book really went all over the place. The author did not talk about size just in centimeters. By size, he also talked about company getting larger, production getting bigger so it have lower costs, population also getting bigger. And speaking of population getting bigger, the author did not at all mention about how population stabilized, which I guess is very Bill Gates quoted. Then it went back to how cars and TVs are getting larger. This is such a confusing mess to go through, which is unfortunate because if this book was trimmed a lot, there's a ton of interesting tidbits about our fascination with size. For example, way before Galileo made occhio to see small object, an invention that will eventually become the microscope in later years. Before all of that, we have found a lot of ways to measure size and distances of other planets, which Galileo also eventually took part of when he pioneered the use of telescope to measure things much bigger and much farther than us. And this is about one of the only sections of the book which have an interesting correlation between much smaller sizes and much bigger sizes. Quickly, the book went back to not making much sense to the topic by explaining attractiveness, which then goes on to talk about canonical views, where to view an object, you need to see it on enough angles to actually perceive the object as what it is. The book went on and on about this for pages just to eventually talk about big statues, specifically Emperor Constantine 12-meter tall statues in Rome. And this part is even more frustrating because he already talked about giant statues a few pages ago when he's talking about a giant puppy statues. It then talks about body height and body weight and ancient Greek building in some of the most confusing manner. I feel like I'm having a stroke reading them. The only interesting part is how much being too tall or too large can be dangerous for you because of how much weight the body needs to carry. The tallest people on earth have short lifespan and apparently also increases risk of cancer. And that's how every information in the book was conveyed. by going at it in the most convoluted way possible. The book feels like every draft ever was combined into one by barely holding tapes. It's one of those books that goes over 200 pages because the publisher said, "Hey, can you get the book to be over 200 pages because it will sell more that way?" And then the author just taped some random fun facts into various parts of the book to fill more pages. It went on and on about symmetry and asymmetry, how because of the golden ratio misconception for some big chunk of our time, we believe in so much asymmetry that we forgot about the beauty in asymmetry. He then goes on to talk about wireless communication and mouse device in computer, about seating plan, even covering some of the wildly discomfortable looking seating design on planes. In a lot of these, sizes took such a small part of the fun facts that they feel like they barely have anything to do with sizes. And that's why even though the book is built with these fun facts about different degrees of sizes, there doesn't seem to be anything that is holding them all together. Reading it feels like just reading random facts. Sizes and measurements only take some small parts in most of the topic discussed in the book. Because of that, it doesn't give it any focus and sharpness to the direction of the topic, and they feel really all over the place. First we talk about big things, then small things, then big things going small, then small things going big. But when big things going small is talking about dinosaur and small thing going big is talking about TV screen, there's not enough correlation between the two. This is not Jurassic Park the movie, so you can just talk about dinosaur and TV at the same time. It's supposed to be a non-fiction book about how science explains the world. Most of the book really feels like the author is trying to make some kind of a point without fully knowing yet what the point he's trying to make is. For example, this is my thumb. My thumb is big, right? Then compared to my pinky is smaller, especially compared to my thumb. Or my head, isn't that amazing? Which if you say yes, I worry for you because it's not that interesting. There's no point to me talking about the size of my thumb, my pinky or my head. The correct response should be, huh? What are you talking about? You high? I don't know what Bill Gates is smoking when he recommended this book in the front cover blurb, but this book is not it. It kinda reminds me about the most expensive book that became the most expensive for the dumbest reason. It's the original Codex Leicester by Leonardo da Vinci. It's basically expensive just because it's the first print, since it's a book that are readily available in many other forms if you're interested. The book itself is just a scientific notes about Leonardo da Vinci's observation on the movement of water, about bridge building, erosion, etc., and the connection between art and science. The only reason the book was sold for more than $30 million in 1994 was because of a collector thing that rich people do to be acknowledged by artsy people. Guess which rich people buy the book? It's Bill Gates. Bill Gates is the one who bought the book, which he's free to do. It is his money and he has a lot of them. But between this book and the Codex Leicester, so far Bill Gates does not seem to be a good book recommender. I already lowered my expectation before reading this book and it is somehow still worse than I expected. Just like the first print of Codex Leicester is not worth $30 million, this book is not worth its full price at £11. I give this book a 1.75. What do you think? Let me know if I missed anything, so leave your thoughts in the comment below and subscribe to the channel. That's about it.